Exodus 14. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell the Israelites that they must turn and camp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You are to camp by the sea before Baal-zephon, opposite it. Pharaoh will think regarding the Israelites, 'They are wandering around confused in the land. The desert has closed in on them.' I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them. I will gain honor because of Pharaoh and because of all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." So this is what they did. When it was reported to the king of Egypt that the people had fled, the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And the king and his servants said, "What in the world have we done? For we have released the people of Israel from serving us." Then he prepared his chariots and took his army with him. He took 600 select chariots and all the rest of the chariots of Egypt and the officers on all of them. But the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he chased after the Israelites. Now the Israelites were going out defiantly. The Egyptians chased after them, and all the horses and chariots and of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army overtook them camping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth before Baal-zephon. When Pharaoh got closer, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them, and they were terrified. The Israelites cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the desert? What in the world have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Isn't this what we told you in Egypt? Leave us alone so that we can serve the Egyptians, because it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord that he will provide for you today. For the Egyptians will see you that you see today, you will never, ever see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you can be still." The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. And as for you, lift up your staff and extend your hand towards the sea and divide it, so that the Israelites may go through the middle of the sea on dry ground. And as for me, I am going to harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will come after them, that I may be honored because of Pharaoh and his armies and his chariots and his horsemen, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I have gained my honor because of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." The angel of God, who was going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. It came between the Egyptian camp and the Israelite camp. It was a dark cloud, and it lit up the night, so that one camp did not come near the other the whole night. Moses stretched out his hand toward the sea, and the Lord drove the sea apart by a strong east wind all that night. And he made the sea into dry land, and the water was divided. So the Israelites went through the middle of the sea on dry ground. The water formed a wall for them on the right and on the left. The Egyptians chased them and followed them into the middle of the sea, all the horses of Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. In the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army through the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw the Egyptian army into panic. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let's flee from Israel, for the Lord fights for them against Egypt." The Lord said to Moses, "Extend your hand towards the sea, so that the waters may flow back on the Egyptians, on their chariots, and on their horsemen." So Moses extended his hand toward the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state. When the sun began to rise, now the Egyptians were fleeing before it, but the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The water returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the army of Pharaoh that was coming after the Israelites in the sea. Not so much as one of them survived. But the Israelites walked on dry ground in the middle of the sea. The water formed a wall for them on the right and on the left. So the Lord saved Israel on that day from the power of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the shore of the sea. When Israel saw the great power that the Lord had exercised over the Egyptians, they feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So the Lord comes to Moses, and he tells the Israelites they must camp between Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. You are to camp by the sea at Baal-zephon, opposite it. We'll think regarding the Israelites, they are wandering around confused in the land. The desert has closed in on them. So the word translated wandering around confused indicates Pharaoh thought the Israelites would be so perplexed and confused that they would not know which way to turn in order to escape, and they would never dream of crossing the sea. So this is interesting. So you have had all of the plagues. You even had the plague of the firstborn son, which is an attack on Pharaoh as being deity. He could not protect his own son because Pharaoh is a deity from the Egyptian mindset. All of the other plagues are attacks on Egyptian deity. And there's one last attack that's going to be against Pharaoh. So he is going to entice Pharaoh. Pharaoh finally let them go, but he is going to entice Pharaoh to chase them. So I'm going to make it look like you guys are idiots, like your God is an idiot. You're going to be wandering around looking like you're confused, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart. Zach is used, indicating that God would make Pharaoh's heart strong or firm. And again, one of the things that I like to point out is the Egyptians, in order to, in the afterlife, your heart has to be weighed and it has to be as light as a feather. Hardening the heart is going to make it weigh more. So he is, in essence, not making himself amenable to the afterlife that he wants to be pursuing by the actions that he's doing. So he's going to have a hard heart. He is going to chase after you, and I will gain honor because of Pharaoh and because of all his army. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So this is what they did. So the purposes for this are for the Egyptians to know that I am the Lord. But we also, when we get further down the road, 40 years later, Rahab says, I know what happened at the Red Sea. So this is absolutely giving honor to God by what he is going to do, because that gets spread far and wide. Maybe the plagues do, maybe they don't, but Pharaoh chasing after you through the Red Sea, that's the thing that does get spread far and wide for sure. So it's reported to the king that the people had fled. The heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people, and the king and his servants said, so the king and his servants turn against the people. The king and his servants say. So the king and his servants are the ones who are all upset. So it doesn't sound like the people of the whole land are. Now it says turns against the people. Is that the Israelites or is that the rest of the Egyptians? The rest of the Egyptians were giving, gold and silver and clothing as people departed. So this could be they're turned against their own people. It could be they've turned against the Israelites. It doesn't matter which the referent is. It's the king and his servants. What is it we have done? We have released the people of Israel from serving us. Like, we made a huge mistake. We let them go. How idiots are we? Like, did you forget all the plagues that were happening while they were here? Like, it was advantageous to let them go. You should let them go so that you'll quit having suffering and pain inflicted upon you and even death. Like, this is another proof of, look, like, the Egyptians forget very quickly about how painful each of the plagues were. And the Israelites forget very quickly how deliverance worked with God. So it doesn't matter if we're followers of God or we're not followers of God. We have short-term memory problems. And what have you done lately? Or I want back what was better. Like, we have short-term problems with our memory. We have a hard time having the foresight to look at things in a longer view. All right, so they prepared his chariots and took 600 select chariots and all the rest of his chariots in Egypt. Why 600? Why 600? Well, 6 is the number of man. So if it's a number representing men, this is his own power, his own strength, his select chariots, the superb chariots, the choice ones, and then also the rest of them. We don't need to count all the rest of them. We've already demonstrated that this is his own power, his own might, and his officers on all of them. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, king of Egypt, and he chased after Israel. Now the Israelites were going out defiantly. What do we have here? With a high hand. The expression means defiantly, boldly, with confidence. The phrase usually used for arrogant sin and pride. The defiant fist, as it were. The image of a high hand can also mean the hand raised to deliver a blow. So the narrator here builds tension between the two resolute forces. So the people of Israel are finally unified in, we're going out, we've been redeemed, we're out of here. And the Egyptians chased after them, and all of the horses and chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army overtook them, camped by the sea beside Pi Hareoth before Baal-zephon, where God told him to go, and now they are there. When Pharaoh got closer, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching afterward, and they were terrified. The Israelites cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses. So they're crying out both to the Lord and to Moses. Is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the desert? What in the world have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Isn't this what we told you in Egypt? Leave us alone so we can serve the Egyptians, because it is better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So Pharaoh is coming as God has planned. Did Moses not tell the people the plan? I mean, God is laying this out and saying, hey, you're going to go camp by the sea, and I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart, and he is going to chase after you. Did Moses not tell the people that? Or when it's happening, it's just terrifying, and their, once again, lack of trust in God is rearing its ugly head? Don't know that it matters, but just raising that question. The other thing that's interesting is, if you study revolutions and uprisings wherever they are, this mentality that the Israelites have here is the exact opposite. It is the mentality of those uprisings, whether slave revolt, whether civil war, whether whatever it is better to die than to live under the oppression of the people that were oppressing us. That is the mentality that is usually the binding factor behind it. It is better to die in the desert than to serve the Egyptians as slaves. That's the mentality. And here the people of Israel, the exact opposite. We'd rather be slaves than to be dead. At least we'd be alive being abused and watching our children being abused and watching fellow Israelites killed because of the abusive power of our overlords. But that's better than me being dead. Anyway, I just like to point out the silliness of it, how ridiculous it sounds. Moses said to the people, do not fear, stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord that he will provide for you today. For Egyptians that you see today, you will never, ever see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you can be still. I wonder what that is. That caught me. The imperfect tense needs to be interpreted in contrast to all that Yahweh will be doing. It may be given a potential imperfect nuance as here, or it may obligatory to the future. the command to stand still, you must be still. I like that, and you can be still. The Lord is going to fight for you. Let me just back up here. In this whole process of being brought out of Egypt, what part did anyone have to do? What part did anyone have to do? The only thing they had to do so far in all the plagues is survive by just being part of the Israelites. That's all they had to do. Then the plague of death, they had to participate in the Passover meal. They had to do that. And then before fleeing, they had to go and ask their neighbor for goodies to take with them. They've done nothing. They've had no effort. They're just along for the ride. So here again, the Lord will fight for you. Be still. You don't have to do anything. I love that whole image there, that God is the one who fights for you. The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on. And as for you," I love that. As for you, what we have in the footnote, the conjunction plus the pronoun and you is emphatic. And as for you, before the imperative lift up, in contrast to 17 with as for me, I. Oh, okay. So the as for you, lift up your staff and extend it towards the sea and divide it so that the Israelites may go through the middle on dry ground. As for me, I'm going to harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will come after you, that I may be honored because of Pharaoh and his army and his chariots and his horsemen. So again, I will be honored. They're going to come after you. That's how I'm being honored. They are chasing you down. So Moses gives confirmation to the people that God will deliver them, and then God replies to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell them to move on. Tell them to get a move on. They need to be moving. Put your hand out, put your staff out, extend it over, and I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart to chase after you." So your job is to part the sea. What? Yeah. Your job is to lift up your staff and extend your hand towards the sea and divide it. It is Moses' job as the representative of God to do the dividing of it. "And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, and I have gained my honor because of Pharaoh and his chariots and his horsemen. The angel of the Lord," notice when this gets mentioned, "the angel of the Lord who was going before the camp moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood between them." So either the angel is there, and the angel, like for lack of a better way of describing it, the angel has the leash, the pillar, and so the angel moves the pillar from one location to another. So when the angel goes, it goes. Or it's one of those things where, like, if you're in a game and you move, then everything that that's drawn to you moves with you. So maybe it just follows. The pillar follows as the angel goes. And so wherever the angel leads, the pillar follows. I don't know. We don't need to, it doesn't matter, but I just want to make the connection that the angel of God is with the pillar. So we can infer every time the pillar is mentioned that the angel of God is there. And every time that the angel of God is now going to be mentioned going forward, that the pillar is there. So we can infer that going forward from this point. Okay, so it was a dark cloud and it lit up the night. Okay, that seems contradictory. The two nouns cloud and darkness form a nominal hendiades, and was the cloud and the darkness means, and it was the dark cloud. Perhaps this is what Egypt saw, preventing them from observing Moses and the Israelites. I think that's how usually people have envisioned this, it is dark cloud for the Egyptians, and it is lighting up the night, so one camp did not come near the other the whole night. So Moses stretched out his hands towards the sea, and the Lord drove the sea apart. So Moses is doing the act. Moses is told that he is to do the act. Moses does the act, but the Lord drives the sea apart. What does he use? A strong east wind. Remember, in one of the other plagues, an east wind blew the plague locusts, I think, in, and then a west wind blew them away. So the east wind is blowing, and it is drying out. It is dividing the sea, and the Israelites went through the middle of the sea on dry ground, and the water formed a wall for them on their right and on their left. Let me see if there's anything here. The clause literally reads, and the waters were for them a wall. The word order in Hebrew is disjunctive with the vav and the noun introducing the circumstantial clause. So, wall of water. So that's usually how it is depicted, that there's a wall there, and so that's what it says. There's a wall, not it just receded and it's all nice and calm and flat. Like, for instance, when there is a tsunami and the water, that's by the shore goes out for a long way, there's not a wall of water until the water comes in. Here, wall of water is formed as the sea is parted. Okay, the Egyptians chased them and followed them into the middle of the sea. All of the horses of Pharaoh, his chariots, his horsemen. In the morning watch, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army through the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw the Egyptian army into panic. So it still appears that the pillar is moving. So he is looking down on them through the pillar of fire and cloud. And he causes the army to go into a panic. Let me see if there's anything on that word. Means to throw into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariot, so they had difficulty driving, and the Egyptians said, let's flee from Israel, for the Lord fights for them against Egypt. So their chariot wheels are jamming. Like, I don't know how they're jamming. It kind of often gets pictured as I'm getting stuck in the mud. I don't know if that's what we should be thinking here. Let's look at the word. Vayasar, which can be translated, and he turned aside with a sense of perhaps of removing the wheels. The reading in the LXX, Sumerian, and the Syriac roots, asar, to bind. The sense here may be clogged, presumably by them sinking into the wet sand. Okay, that could be they get clogged up, or like if there's muck in there and it gets bound up in the wheels, or sand in there, whatever. Doesn't matter. They're having a problem. Their chariots aren't going. And they're like, let's quit pursuing and go back. The Lord said to Moses, extend your hand towards the sea, that the waters may flow back on the Egyptians, on their chariots, and on their horsemen. So Moses extended his hands towards the sea, and the sea returned to the normal state when the sun began to rise. So notice what it says here. He is to extend his hand toward the sea now so it returns to normal. We kind of picture this usually as Moses having to hold his hand the entire time over there to keep it parted. It's not how it reads. It reads as he extends his hands, and then the Lord does the act of dividing the sea. He walks through. He then is going to extend his hand getting on the other side, and the sea will collapse back on. So I think we get mixed up with the other one where as long as he's holding his staff up, the Israelites win. When he lowers his staff, the Israelites lose. So I think we conflate that image back here. I don't think we need to have that. I think it's simply he extends the staff, the sea is parted, he extends his staff, and the sea rushes back in. And this happens at the sunrise. So they are crossing the sea all night long in the darkness with the army behind them, with the pillar of cloud lighting their way to go. Now, the Egyptians were fleeing before the Lord, but the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. The water returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen and all the army of Pharaoh that was coming after the Israelites into the sea. So not so much as one of them survived. So here's one of those things, and it's popped up again, is that there are people that want so badly to prove the Exodus that they keep trying to find all of the places where this happened. And so the most recent one is, look, we found chariot wheels at the bottom of the sea. This must be it. It could be. I'm not downplaying that. But I don't need to have chariot wheels found at the bottom of the sea to prove anything. I find the Bible is completely reliable. It is trustworthy. And so it telling me the story is all that I need in order to have belief and faith. So the water returns, covers them all, and none survive. But the Israelites, so they're repeating this. We already know this. Maybe this is a chiasm structure here with the repetition. The Israelites walked on dry ground in the middle of the sea, and the water formed walls of them on the right and the left. Almost exact phrasing we had earlier. So the Lord saved Israel on that day from the power of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great power that the Lord had exercised over the Egyptians, they feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and his servant Moses. So now, because God has done all of this, they are believing in him. Like, he already did all the plagues. He did all the plagues. We're also going to see this doesn't last long. So they fear the Lord and they believe in him. And, well, it's not really a long-lasting thing that they actually stick with it. But for now, they good. They good.